Olga quickly dialed Nick's number, her heart racing with anticipation. Nick had always been a reliable person in her life, especially when it came to hiding information about Kaya and her whereabouts from James. "Hey Nick, it's me," she said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the excitement bubbling within her. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Nick's voice came through the phone, sounding cheerful as always. "Hey, Olga. It's great to hear from you. It's not a great time for a conversation. I am at work, and James might get suspicious and he's been angry since morning. By the way, what can I do for you?" Olga quickly understood the urgency in Nick's voice and decided to get straight to the point. "I need your help finding the best school in the city for Kaya. Maggie and I have decided it's time for her to start school here, and we want to make sure she gets the best education possible. Without James's knowledge, he cannot find out about Kaya. Not today, not forever." Nick paused for a moment, processing Olga's request. "Of course, Olga. I understand. I'll do some research and get back to you as soon as possible. But hey, are you sure you're okay? You sound a bit stressed." Olga couldn't help but let out a small laugh. "I'm fine, Nick. I'm just a little nervous about everything, you know. But with your help, I'm sure everything will go as planned." "All right, I'll get on it right away," Nick replied, his tone reassuring. "And don't worry, Olga. Everything will work out just fine. You've got a strong support system behind you, remember?" "Thanks, Nick. I really appreciate it," Olga said gratefully. Nick was nervous about asking Olga out. The last time he saw her was the day she left the city 5 years ago. At that time, she was devastated by James's betrayal. Now that Olga was back, he wanted to take his chance. "Hey Olga, do you have time today? Maybe this evening I wish we could meet up. It's been too long." Olga felt a mix of surprise and warmth flood through her at Nick's invitation. She hadn't expected him to ask her out, especially not after everything that had happened in the past. He'd been a big support when she was in hiding. He went against his boss for her. As she considered his offer, she realized that she missed their friendship and valued his presence in her life. "Sure, Nick. I'd love to catch up," Olga replied, a smile spreading across her face. "How about we meet at that cafe near the park around 6 p.m.? It's been ages since I've had their coffee." Nick's voice brightened with enthusiasm. "That sounds perfect, Olga. I'll see you there at 6. I can't wait to hear all about what you've been up to these past few years. Don't forget to bring Kaya. I need to meet her." As she set her phone down, Olga felt a wave of relief wash over her. With Nick's help, she was confident that her information would stay confidential and that they would find the perfect school for Kaya. With Maggie's unwavering support and love, she knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Turning to Maggie, Olga smiled, her heart filled with gratitude for her friend. "Nick's going to help us find a school for Kaya. He even asked me out. It's not a date, though, but I have a good feeling about this, Maggie. Everything is going to be okay." Maggie returned Olga's smile, her eyes shining with determination. "I believe you, Olga. We'll do whatever it takes to give Kaya the best future possible. But I think James will find out about you if you start hanging out with Nick. And if he does, he will fire Nick and take Kaya away to be raised by his wife. He will blame you for not telling him that you have a child. His child. Are you ready to face the challenges?" Olga cut her off. "Forget it, Maggie. That jerk can never take my baby away. He's the reason for my setbacks. He lied to me and married someone else. Do you remember the words he said to me when I found out that he had a fiancé? He made it look like I sold myself to him. He used me, Maggie. If you have forgotten, he doesn't deserve to be the father of my baby. That useless man." Olga's voice trembled with a mix of anger and hurt as she recounted the painful memories of James's betrayal. Maggie could see the pain etched in her friend's eyes, and she reached out, placing a comforting hand on Olga's shoulder. "I'm sorry, Olga. I didn't mean to bring up those painful memories," Maggie said softly, her heart aching for her friend. "You're right. James doesn't deserve to be a part of Kaya's life after what he did to you. We'll do everything in our power to protect her from him. Orga took a deep breath, trying to push aside the painful memories that threatened to overwhelm her. I know you didn't mean to, Maggie. It's just hard to forget what he did. But you're right. We need to focus on the present and the future. And right now, I need to find a job so I can support Kaya and myself. Maggie nodded in understanding, her mind already racing with ideas. I'll help you with that, Orga. We'll find you a job that suits your skills and allows you to take care of Kaya without any interference from James. You have talent and determination. I do not doubt that you'll succeed. Orga smiled gratefully at Maggie, feeling a surge of hope and determination wash over her. With Maggie by her side, she knew she could face whatever challenges came her way. Thank you, Maggie. I don't know what I would do without you, Orga said, her voice filled with sincerity. Maggie squeezed Orga's shoulder reassuringly. You don't have to thank me, Orga. We're a family, and family sticks together through thick and thin. Now, let's focus on finding you that job and giving Kaya the bright future she deserves. Meanwhile, at Hawkins Corporation, James had seen how Nick secretly went on the phone. It had never happened before, so he was curious to know who Nick was talking to like that. He could see that things were different. What is Nick hiding? Did he betray me? I will find a way, and if he does, he had better get prepared for the result. I will find an opportunity to use Nick's phone and find out what's going on. James had looked for Orga everywhere, and used all his connections to at least get to talk to her one last time. But he couldn't. What will he do by the time he finds out that Nick knew about Orga all along? As James stewed in his suspicions and frustrations, Nick continued his work, unaware of the scrutiny he was under. He had always been meticulous about keeping Orga's whereabouts hidden from James, knowing the consequences if James were to find out about her and Kaya. But now, with James growing more suspicious, Nick couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. As the day progressed, James found himself with a rare moment alone at his desk. His mind raced with thoughts of Orga and the child he hadn't known about until recently. He couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. He betrayed Orga, the only woman he had ever truly loved, by marrying Jocelyn for business. Now he's living a life of regret. The woman he married treats him like a dog, and all 5 years of his marriage have been a mess. No single day had passed without him thinking about Orga. I would have been the happiest man in the universe if I had chosen to marry Orga. James's heart weighed heavy with remorse as he reflected on the choices he had made. He couldn't shake the memories of Orga, her laughter, her kindness, and the love they once shared. Regret gnawed at him, eating away at his conscience with each passing moment. Driven by a mixture of guilt and longing, James knew he had to find out more about Orga's current life. He couldn't continue living in ignorance. He understood that Maggie was the only person who could lead him to Orga's whereabouts. But she didn't want to talk to him, let alone see him. I'm not sure if this is a good thing, but I am going to make sure that Maggie helps me find Orga. I've helped Maggie with her career, yet she refused to let me meet Orga for the last time. 5 years ago, after his last conversation with Orga, he wanted to explain everything to her. He knew he had hurt her so much to be forgiven, but he wanted Orga to see that he truly loved her, and that all he did was for his company. He was hoping to meet her at work, but was welcomed by the morning news that Orga had resigned from the company. He called Nick and asked why he had never mentioned Orga's resignation. At that time, Nick looked puzzled to find out that James didn't know about it. Sir, I came to tell you, but you were busily romancing Jocelyn. I told you it was important. You said everything could wait. I came back again, but that time Orga entered, and I gave you time so you two could talk. I thought she was there to tell you about it. That's why I didn't bother to bring up any topic related to Orga again. James rushed to Orga's apartment, only to meet the cold and angry Maggie. The only thing she told him was, Orga has already left the country. She went far from you, somewhere you'll never find out. Now, James has found out that the failure of his company's project was caused by Jocelyn and her family, just to force him into marriage. He took out his phone and called Nick. After a few rings, Nick picked it up. "Nick, come to my office now." James sat at his desk, tapping his fingers impatiently as he waited for Nick to arrive. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, regret, and determination. He couldn't believe he had been manipulated so thoroughly by Jocelyn and her family. The realization fueled his resolve to make things right, especially with Olga. When Nick finally entered the office, he could immediately sense the tension in the air. "What's going on, sir? You look frustrated," Nick asked cautiously. James wasted no time. "I need all the information you have on Jocelyn and her family. Everything, Nick. I want to know their connections, their businesses, their weaknesses, anything that can help me bring them down." Nick's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Are you sure about this, sir? They are your in-laws. You know how they have saved us from bankruptcy. Going up against the Cowells is no small feat. They're one of the most influential families in the country now." Nick said that because he didn't know that the Cowells were the ones behind the bankruptcy in the first place. They were the ones behind it all along. "I broke Olga's heart for nothing," James said in anger. "What? Why, boss? I mean, why would they go that far? They did it to force me into marrying their daughter and gain power by being partners with the Hawkins. They made it look like they were saving me from bankruptcy, so that I would always feel indebted to them and do whatever they said. Be like their dog. Can you imagine?" James replied firmly. "I am more sure than ever of what I am going to do next. They've meddled enough in my life. It's time I took control of my own destiny. They will pay for every night of sadness I have experienced living with Jocelyn." Nick nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. This was the first time James had opened up to talk about his life for the past 5 years. He had thought that James was being as ruthless as he was before meeting Olga. After breaking up with her, he returned to his usual self. Nick never thought that James was going through a lot of pain in his marriage with Jocelyn. "I'll get on it right away, sir. But if I may ask, what's your plan?" James leaned back in his chair, a determined glint in his eyes. "First, we dismantle their hold over my company. Then, we find Olga. I owe her the truth, and I'll make sure she knows how deeply sorry I am. First, find me the information I need." Nick was ready to do whatever it took to pay back what the Cowells did to his boss and the company, but he wasn't ready to let James get near Olga again. He loves Olga more than his life. He had kept James in the dark for the past 5 years, even though he knew how hard it was for James. Now he wants to win Olga over. Now that Olga had agreed to go on a date with him, he was more sure than ever that one day she would be his. Nick, equally committed to the cause, began digging into the Cowell family's affairs, gathering every bit of information that could potentially dismantle their hold over James and his company. James delved into the plan to take back control of his life. He had to tell his parents, especially his father, as the chairman of the Hawkins Corporation, about what he had found out about what his so-called in-laws did to him. They knew that their son was having a hard time in his marriage, but they thought that it was something that the couple could fix. The constant cheating of Jocelyn, disrespecting James, and other bad things happened. But with this news, James didn't know how they would react. It was already in the evening when he chose to go to his family mansion. He couldn't go to his villa where his wife Jocelyn was. He didn't even want to see her face. What he wanted was his parents' love and comfort. He took his suit and went out of the office. As they took the elevator, he told Nick that he needed to be alone. He wouldn't need a driver. That was great news for Nick because he was already late for his date with Olga. James didn't know that Olga had come back to the city. That's why he didn't ask for permission. "All right, boss. Take care on your way." As the elevator door opened, everyone entered his car, and Nick was the first to leave. The drive to the mansion felt like an eternity, with each passing mile laden with anticipation and anxiety. Arriving at the grand estate, he was greeted by the familiar sight of the sprawling gardens and the imposing facade of the mansion. His parents, Corner and Nicole, welcomed him warmly. But James could sense the tension in his heart, full of emotions, as he prepared to reveal the truth about Jocelyn and her family. As they gathered in the study, James took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "Mom, Dad, there's something I need to tell you," James began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "It's about Jocelyn and her family." Corner and Nicole exchanged a concerned glance, their expressions reflecting the gravity of the situation. "What is it, James? Did she cheat again?" "You know you can tell us anything," his mother said gently, reaching out to place a reassuring hand on his arm. Taking a moment to compose himself, James started. "Yesterday, I came back from work and found Jocelyn waiting for me. As soon as I entered the house, she started shouting at me, disrespecting me, and reminding me that without her family, I would be nothing now. Only because I came late. I didn't want to argue, so I ignored her. I wanted to take a hot bath. I was tired, but she couldn't understand it. With all the words she was saying, she revealed her secret unwillingly." James looked at his father and said, "Dad, you remember at the board meeting that my plan for the Horizon project was supposed to exceed expectations. We were all surprised by how it failed at the last moment when they had nothing more to do about it. At that time, the only chance I had was to marry Jocelyn. Dad, could you believe that the project failure was Cowell's doing, including Jocelyn, who claimed to love me so much? You all know what she did to me after our wedding day. I have been living with a hell of a family for the past 5 years. I ignored it because I thought that was the price I had to pay to get my company and power back." He recounted the shocking truth about how Jocelyn's family had orchestrated the downfall of his company to manipulate him into marriage, all for their gain. He detailed their deceit and manipulation, laying bare the extent of their betrayal. Corner listened in stunned silence, his expressions alternating between disbelief and anger as he absorbed the weight of James's words. His mother was already crying about the turmoil that her son had been going through. She unknowingly supported the Cowells. She thought that Jocelyn could be a perfect daughter-in-law. Now the revelation shook them to the core, shattering any illusions they may have held about the Cowell family.